Welcome, Elly Griffiths, here to Denmark. It's so nice to see you back in Horsens.
Oh, it's lovely.
You have many
be
fans,
here. Wow.
many readers here in Denmark.
Oh,
So
it's
it's nice to have you back. Your editor, Jane, back home, she calls, in the UK, she calls your book about Ruth for an amazing mixture between crime mysteries and a kind of soap opera. Because as a reader, you really want to know what happens to all these lovely characters. I totally agree. I think we all do. And in 4 years, 10 Galloway crime novels have been published in Denmark. And your latest book, The Dark Angel, Den mørke engel.
Den mørke engel.
Yes, in Danish.
I'm trying.
But before we talk about the book, I would like with another question. Because since you last visited Horsens a couple of years ago, a lot has happened. There's a war going on in Europe. COVID-19 has spread around the world, and we have all been through lockdown. How has that affected you? I mean, being a writer and being creative.
It's certainly been a strange time, isn't it? Really strange time. And, you know, I felt very lucky, really, in a way, because I was locked down at home in Brighton. I live in the south coast of England by the sea, and I was there with my husband. And in fact, our 2 grown-up children came home, so we were all together. But I had this little shed in the garden. And I was so lucky to have that, because my husband had this idea that lockdown would be a great opportunity to clean the house. And he said,
it's a writing shed, right?
Yeah. And he said, oh, it'll be really good. We can do a deep clean. And I said, that's great, but I've got to go to my shed. And I ran out in the garden with my cat. I've got a cat, Gus.
Yes.
Gus, yeah. And I could escape to the shed and just escape to a different world, you know, and it was, I felt very, very lucky. And I know lots of people, you know, people in the health service and teachers, and had such a terrible time. But, you know, I did feel lucky. And also, I could kind of connect to my readers. And one of the things I decided to do quite early on was to read my books aloud.
You did that on Facebook?
Yeah, on my Facebook page. So I started with the first book, Pigen under hjørnet. Is that what it's called? That one.
Almost.
Almost. I started with that one, and I read it aloud, and I ended up reading 3 books, and it was really nice and really allowed me to connect to readers. So that was actually lovely. You know, I did feel very, very lucky.
And I know that The Locked Room, book number 14 about Ruth, is out in the UK now.
Yes.
And it's actually set in the lockdown period, right?
Yes, and I did have to... I think all writers are making this decision at the moment, aren't they? Whether to ignore 2020 and the pandemic, and I can see why you would do that, or whether to cover it. And I thought about both options, really. But then I thought, because I'd written a book about Ruth every year for 14 years, it sort of felt wrong to miss out 2020 and the pandemic. So, and I also thought, I hoped, readers would quite like to see how they coped with it. So, you know, you have Ruth in her isolated cottage. You have Cathbad putting a circle of protection around the house.
Of course,
and, you know,
he probably enjoys it.
Well, you know, he's perfect for lockdown.
Yeah.
Or you'd think. But I was kind of quite worried about how the book would be received, because maybe people don't want to hear about it, but actually it's been my most successful book in the UK, so hopefully people did like it, and there was enough mixture of mystery and soap opera to keep people happy.
We like that. You actually did a 2-book deal with your publisher when you wrote the first novel. I know we'll get to The Dark Angel in a second, but I think it's, I mean, how did you realize that the series had actually legs and could go on for quite a
Well, it was actually just for the one book. So as a lot of you know, I was published before under my own name, which is Domenica de Rosa. So it sounds made up, but that is my own name. So I'd been published before, but then I wrote a crime novel, and my previous publishers didn't want it. And so a new publisher, Jane Wood at Quercus, bought it. And then I became Elly Griffiths. And my grandmother was called Ellen Griffiths. And I'm not sure how I became Elly. And I asked Jane, and she said, I think it just looked a bit tidier.
Yeah.
And it does fit really nicely there. So there you are. I became Elly because it was tidier. But I thought it would be just for that one book. And although I had the idea in my head, I'd got the idea from my archaeologist husband to write about an archaeologist, and I had the idea that Ruth and Nelson would have a long story. I always thought they would have it, but I didn't know that I'd get to write it. So I feel very, very lucky. How lucky I am to have got to write it.
But I mean, you're not only writing the series about Ruth and Nelson, you are also the author of the Brighton mysteries, and sometimes you write books for children, and you've written some standalones. Is that somehow keeping the Galloway series fresh? That you do another book in between?
Yeah, definitely. When I started to, you write a book a year in a series, and you sometimes want a little bit of a break. So I think when I started doing 2 books a year, one in another series, and now you've got the first standalone, which is the first Harbinder novel, it really did keep them fresh, because when I was writing that book, I was really keen to get back to Ruth, and when I was writing Ruth, I kind of wanted to get back to Harbinder. So yes, so I think it has helped for me keep them fresh, and the justice books, the children's books.
That's every Friday, right?
Every Friday,
yes.
yeah, every Friday I write a chapter, just because it cheers me up.
Excellent. Whatever keeps you going on.
Exactly, yes.
Well, let's talk a bit about your new book here in Danish, because for 9 books, Ruth has been working hard. So now you have actually allowed her to go on a holiday, although it's a working holiday.
Yeah, I did think that. I'm writing about her for 10 years, and she's never had a holiday. Although,
she's been in
to be fair, she went to Blackpool.
Blackpool,
but anyone who's been to Blackpool, that doesn't count.
But in this book, she goes to Italy.
To Italy,
Just tell us a bit about the book without any spoilers.
Okay, so when this book starts, so if you read the one before. It does leave Ruth in a rather difficult situation, and Nelson in a rather... So she wants to get away, and she gets an invitation from an Italian archaeologist called Angelo Morelli, who invites her to go to Italy to look at some bones that he's found. There's some question marks about the bones. So she goes to this little village in a hilltop town in Italy, and she finds that not only are there many questions about this skeleton that's been found, but there are many secrets in the little village, some of which go back to Roman times, but some of them go back to Italy's more recent history in the Second World War, where this area, the Liri Valley, the village is...
Tell us about the area. It's an hour away from Rome, more or less.
Well, it's very much based on the place where we have a little holiday house, which is a place called Fontana Liri. It's quite funny in English, because the place where we have a house is called Fontana Liri Superiore, and at the bottom of the hill there's a place called Fontana Liri Inferiore. Oh. So imagine living there. Anyhow, so we've got we bought this place on the internet. We bought it on eBay, practically, this little apartment in this old village, in this old town. And it's in Lazio, so it's between Rome and Naples. It's kind of quite near Monte Cassino, which I think we all know from a huge
the monastery,
battle.
yes,
where the monastery was destroyed, and it's now been rebuilt in the Second World War. So it's an interesting area. And also, in Roman times, it was fought over by the Romans and the Italic tribes. And this book is also about those Italic tribes, the Volsci, who were the sort of native Italians who sort of fought against the Romans. So there's loads of history there, like everywhere in Italy. And it's very beautiful, but there are many layers there. So I thought it was a good place to set a book. And it meant I had to go there. What a shame to
Yeah, that's a pity. But why Italy? Why this? Why is the area nice for a book about Ruth?
Well, Italy is full of archaeology, and it's full of archaeology, and Italy has only been unified, 200 years. I think 1871, Italy became Italy. So before then, it's a very, it's a place where, a very regional place, and even in the little place where we are, they've got a particular dialect that's hard to understand. An Italian person, like my dad was Italian, he would always have called himself Neapolitan, because that was his identity, being from Naples, more than maybe maybe being Italian. So it's an interesting place to write a book for that reason, full of archaeology for Ruth. But also I wanted to see what Ruth and Nelson would be like on holiday.
Yeah, because you sometimes behave in another way,
do.
perhaps.
And of course it's not long. So Ruth goes to, and I'm not giving anything away to say, it's not long before the sort of glowering shape of Nelson appears, accompanied by a man wearing a purple cloak.
Yeah.
So suddenly Nelson and Catbad are there, yeah.
But I can also ask in another way, why did it take Ruth a long time to go to Italy?
Well, I suppose there is a danger, isn't there, when you write a series and it's very much rooted in place. And I think, I was thinking this last night when I was driving from the airport to Horsens, thinking how similar this is to Ruth's landscape, you know, that flat marshland and the sea there whispering in the distance. But place is very important to the Ruth books. So I did fear, really, taking her out of, and you know how it is when you have a long-running TV series and there's a Christmas special and they take them on holiday and everyone thinks, oh, no. So I didn't want people to think that. So I think it probably took 10 books for me to feel confident enough to take Ruth to Italy. But, of course, there is another plot back home in Norfolk. So
you have an Italian story and you have a Norfolk story and they sort of run together in the end.
Yes.
Yeah. Which one did you made up first?
Oh, that's a good. You always ask good questions, Rebekka. I think the Italian story was there first because it was in my head to write this story, and it starts with a particular scene involving a mobile phone that I'd wanted to write for quite a long time. So I had that story first, but then I wanted to have a Norfolk story to run alongside because, of course, when Nelson is in Italy following Ruth, his family are back at home. And who knows what's going on with them.
Yeah. In the book, there are many rich details about the Italian countryside, about gastronomy and history. There's less rain and more lemon trees in Italy than in the UK. Has it in any way affected the way that you work with this book? I mean, that's...
I think so. They wear far less clothes in this book than they have, you know, in any other book.
And you get to go to the beach and actually enjoying it.
They get to go to the beach and, you know, Ruth is with her friend Shona, who is Ruth's friend, but also I think there's a slight... sometimes antagonism between them, and Shona is beautiful, and she's one of those women who goes on holiday and she always has exactly the right clothes
and know how to
has
put
a bikini.
Well,
Rebekka, very good scarf work from you, I have to say. And Shona would be proud of that jacket, you know. So she always knows what to wear, and Ruth feels a little bit awkward there on the beach. But gradually, you know how it is when you're on holiday. Gradually, the wine and the sun, it does have an effect on you.
But tell us about the relationship between Ruth and her friend Shona. Shona also goes with her son Louis, and Ruth has her daughter with her as well. Because sometimes I wonder, why are the two women friends? Because they don't have much in common, do they?
No,
or do they?
They don't, and I think it's a case with lots of friendships. You think, oh, why are they friends? But they are friends. They both work at the university. Shona teaches English, and I have a few good moments where I laughed to myself when Ruth said things like, never trust anyone who quotes Shakespeare, because I studied English and I'm always quoting Shakespeare, but, you know, Ruth is a bit suspicious of that. So, and they do have quite a lot of history. So before the book started, they were friends, they holidayed together when they were both single. But now Shona's in a relationship with Ruth's rather annoying boss, Phil, and they have a son. And Ruth is there with her daughter, Kate, and anyone who's been on holiday with their children and another family with children know the issues that can arise there, you know, what time's bedtime, who has what happens if they argue. So I wanted to do that as well.
Can you eat in front of the telly and all that?
Can you eat in front of the telly, exactly? Can you have a pudding? Do you have to finish, you know, all those things. So I wanted to do that as well, to have all that.
But she's staying in this small village that has its own secret dating back to the World War II. And I know you have also said before that your father was Italian. He was an Italian immigrant, and he went to live in this London's Italian quarter. But he was actually interned as an enemy alien during the war.
Yes.
So I just wondered, was the war and Italy's role in the war something that you talked a lot about in your childhood home?
Yes, it really was, because yes, as you said, and I've written about this in one of my Domenica De Rosa books, my dad came with his parents to London after the First World War, and they lived in the part of London, those of you who know London, called Clerkenwell, which was known as the Italian Quarter. And then there was an Italian church, there still is an Italian church there, Italian schools, Italian hospitals. But when the war came, the Second World War, Winston Churchill said, collar the lot. And all Italian immigrants are rounded up and interned. And that happened to my dad. I don't think he thought that that was unfair, really, because he was of sort of fighting age. But it definitely did inform his whole life. And we did talk about the war, because, of course, he had relatives in Italy who fought. And I remember at school, I was about, I don't know, 6 or 7, and we were talking about the war. I don't know why, and I said, oh, my dad was a prisoner of war. And the teacher said, oh, really? Who imprisoned him? Was it the Germans or the Japanese? And I said, no, it was the British. And they went, oh, and I thought, oh, he was on the wrong side. And so that kind of does, you know, inform your views a little bit.
In the book here, Ruth discovers a modern-day body in the village church, and her holiday turned upside down, we can say. Several of your books are about religion in some way. In this, we meet a Syrian refugee who's a Catholic, and even though that Ruth loves to visit churches, she hates being at church. So, I mean, why has religion once again become a theme in your book?
I don't know, really. When I had written those 4 books under my own name, and I started to write a crime novel, I said to myself, right, no Italians and no Catholics. And I stuck to the no Italians rule until book 10, but oh my goodness, Catholics are everywhere. I guess I'm really interested in what people believe and why I was brought up Catholic, though I'm not a practicing Catholic now. My husband's a complete atheist, so in that way we're like Ruth and Nelson, the other way around, really. I've got a very good friend. I've got a very good friend from school, and we went to a Catholic school. But her life's taken a different direction, and she is now a druid. And she is psychic, and I've no reason to doubt that. She's psychic. She says she has a psychic link to me because we've known each other since we were 5. But she's never worked out that she's Cathbad.
Right?
So she's not that psychic. But I haven't, and one book's dedicated to her, but she still hasn't worked it out. Well, maybe she has, who knows. But I'm very interested because of her in that particular, you know, paganism and Druidism and that religion that's very rooted in nature. And I hope to treat all those religions with respect. And in this book, yes, it does involve a very Catholic community in some ways, but also looks at the plight of refugees who've been helped by the church in lots of cases in Italy, but in other cases haven't. So yes, lots of religion, I'm afraid, lots of religion there.
Tell us a bit about Nelson, because in the beginning he's back home in Norfolk, and he's also struggling. What is his problem? I mean, well, tell us a bit about his situation.
Yeah, so for those of you who, you know, the books, Ruth has a child with DCI Nelson, who is the chief of police in Norfolk. But he's married. He's still married to Michelle, and he has 2 grown-up children. And in the previous book to this, he finds that his wife, just when he possibly was considering a future with Ruth, he finds that his wife is pregnant again. So that's where he is, and that's where the family is. And there are also some slight questions on the paternity of this baby. So Nelson is not in a great place. He's always very... He is trying, I think, to do the right thing, but he's kind of full of guilt and full of worry about the way his life's going. So, yeah, so Nelson's not in a great place, and I think that for that reason as well, he kind of appreciates the little break he has in Italy, the little sort of moment out of time that he gets to go there, even though there's a murder, as he said.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah, a couple of murders, yeah.
But he's also a little concerned with the early release from prison of a man who has threatened him when he put him away in prison.
Yes, so that's what's happening in Norfolk, is that, as you say, there's a man who was put in prison by Nelson many years ago, has now emerged, has found religion, another bit of religious plot, but at one time had vowed revenge on Nelson. So in going to Italy, has he left his family in danger? I'm going to leave that there.
When you're writing, Elly, how do you find the balance between how much you can write about their private life and how much you need to write about the crime, mystery, about the puzzle, and all the.
Well, I think that sort of does get a little more tricky as the series goes on, because there's so much history now between the characters, and it's not just Ruth and Nelson. Of course, it's Cuthbert and Judy.
It's getting more and more
Clough.
complicated somehow.
Clough gets married in the beginning of this book. So, you know, there are all these different stories intertangling. So it is sometimes quite hard to involve a murderer.
But you have to hide the killer as well. I mean,
to remember to have a murder as well, you know. But I think that one of the great things about writing crime fiction is there's always something that's going to happen. And what happens when a terrible thing like a murder happens is that everything gets thrown up in the air and everything changes, doesn't it, from that moment onwards. So I think it's in some ways it's very nice way to write about relationships, to have these relationships, and then every so often something happens that throws them all up into the air. So.
And we do behave differently away somehow. So. Can you tell a few words about the title? Why is it called The Dark Angel?
Well, yeah, in some ways you sort of have to read the book to know, but it's the church in the place where she lives is called St. Michael and all the angels, and there's quite a lot of themes about, you know, whether people are angelic or whether they're devilish, really. So there's that's a theme of the book, and of course, as we all know, Lucifer, the devil, was an angel first. So. That's a theme in the book.
It's very interesting. Will we ever see Ruth as a TV character?
Oh, gosh, I hope so. I mean, I seem to remember last time I was here, we talked about this. When we were in Holston Library, we talked about this. TV, it's been the series has been optioned for TV many times, I think 4 times now, and it's just about to be optioned again. So I don't know really. It's a strange old world, because you know that you get a script and you get actors involved and it goes a certain way and then it stops. So I don't know. I hope one day, or maybe not. Maybe all I can do, I think, is keep writing the books. And in some ways, we have our own, because we're all readers in this room, we have our own Ruth and Nelson in our heads, don't we?
But I know you have mentioned an actress who could, and you can Google her if you don't know her, but please tell us her name.
Yeah, it's an actress called Ruth Jones, who I've always thought would be a very good Ruth. So do Google her. She was in Gavin and Stacey, but don't think about her in that. Think about her in another series that she was in. But for me, she looks very like, and I've always thought, for me anyhow, that Nelson looks a bit like Richard Armitage. So I feel that poor Richard wouldn't really understand the books, and I'd have to spend a lot of time with him, probably reading to him. I'd be prepared to do that.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. But in fact, the Harbinder Kaur books, so we were talking about the new series, they might even get on TV first, because there's a company really interested in them and a really good script by a British Indian writer. So, you know, that she might even get there first.
Do you have any ambitions as an author, writer, that you have not yet fulfilled? Because you're very active and write plenty of books. But
yes, definitely. I think one always has ambitions. Recently, the Locked Room got to #1 in the UK, and I said to my publishers, I have no ambitions left, but I soon thought of a few more. So,
and book number 14, is that the end? Or
it's not the end. It's not the end,
okay.
No. So, yeah, I do have ambitions. I'd like to write something different, something non-crime one day. I'd like to write a new series. I have ideas for a new series, but I still have plenty of ambitions for Ruth and Nelson as well.
So how long time would you be able to give Ruth a voice?
I'm not sure how long. I think that I might be coming up to it in the UK anyhow, where I'm writing book 15. I think I will coming up to a time where there's going to be a bit of a break, but I don't think it would be a break forever. It would be like a break and then for a few years and then come back to it. So
that sounds good. Efter det her, så kan I, er der meet and greet på Gads stand, where you can meet Elly, and I think have a small glass of champagne, and perhaps a selfie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebekka.
And it's a wonderful book.
Thank you. Thank you.